This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
Oil prices fell on Tuesday, easing for a second day, as market participants weighed the possibility of a de-escalation in U.S.-Iran tensions, while a firmer dollar placed greater downside pressure on prices. Brent crude futures fell 39 cents, or 0.5%, at $65.91 per barrel at 0330 GMT. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude was at $61.83 per barrel, down 31 cents, or 0.5%. Oil prices fell more than 4% on Monday after U.S. President Donald Trump said Iran was seriously talking with Washington, signaling a de-escalation of tensions with the OPEC member.
Indian refiners will need a wind-down period to complete Russian oil deals before imports from that country can be halted, and they have so far not been ordered by the government to stop such imports, two refining sources said. U.S. President Donald Trump announced a trade agreement with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Monday that included a halt to Indian oil purchases from Russia. Indian companies have already booked cargoes loading in February and arriving in March, so a wind-down period would be needed to fulfill existing commitments, the sources said. They spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak with the media.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
Crude oil producers in the United States continued bringing oil wells back online on Monday, with only around 0.7% of national output still halted in the aftermath of a winter storm that ravaged production last month. Some 100,000 barrels per day of crude output remained shut, according to consultancy Energy Aspects, with outages in the Anadarko accounting for the bulk of the losses, followed by the Appalachia. It looks like production is fully restored in the Permian, said Energy Aspects analyst Jesse Jones.
India's financial markets rallied sharply on Tuesday after a trade deal that slashed U.S. tariffs on Indian goods to 18% from 50%, a development that investors said lifts a key overhang over the country's stocks, bonds and currency. India's benchmark stock index, the Nifty 50, was up nearly 3% and the rupee climbed over 1% to 90.40 per dollar in early trading. The yield on the country's 10-year benchmark bond declined 5 bits per second to 6.72%. The Nifty rose as much as 5% in early trading, with the rise putting it on course for the best one-day gain in 5 years, while the rupee was on track for its best day since November 2022. Next, we have the top news in metal markets. U.S. President Donald Trump announced plans on Monday to launch a strategic stockpile of critical minerals backed by $10 billion in seed funding from the U.S. Export-Import Bank. For years, American businesses have risked running out of critical minerals during market disruptions, Trump said during an Oval Office event. Today, we're launching what will be known as Project Vault to ensure that American businesses and workers are never harmed by any shortage.
Iron ore futures dipped on Tuesday, extending losses from a commodities sell-off in the previous session as sluggish steel demand ahead of the Chinese Lunar New Year later this month weighed on prices further. The most traded May iron ore contract on China's Dalian Commodity Exchange traded 1.21% lower at 777 yuan, $111.97, a metric ton, as of 0246 GMT. The benchmark March iron ore on the Singapore exchange was 0.84% lower at $102 a ton. Prices plummeted on Monday on the back of a broad-based commodities slump led by gold and silver.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
Japan's exports of agricultural, forestry and fishery products rose 12.8% to an all-time high in 2025, lifted by stronger shipments to the United States despite new tariffs, and by a rebound in exports to China from the previous year's slump. Exports totaled 1.701 trillion yen, $10.9 billion, last year, up from 1.507 trillion yen in 2024, marking a 13th consecutive annual gain and a record high, the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, MAFF, said on Tuesday. Rising global interest in Japanese cuisine, greater awareness of Japanese food among inbound tourists, and growing health consciousness are driving demand, said Kazuyoshi Nakasugi, Deputy Director of MAFF's Export Policy Planning Division, pointing to industry hearings.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.